Is there some beautiful, wonderful self-development tool that you know you love, but that you're just not doing? You just can't seem to oomph yourself to do it. I bet something popped into your head right now. So maybe it's journaling, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's just getting to bed and having like a nice wind down experience. Maybe it's tapping or EFT, which I talk about a lot on this channel. That's where we tap on acupressure points on our bodies and face to calm the nervous system, to open our minds to the bigger truth of what's happening. It's really good. We're going to talk about it more. But is there some tool that you know is beneficial, but you're not using? Maybe yes, maybe no. If yes, I think you're really going to like this video, because not only am I going to help you understand part of why you may not be using it, but I'm going to give you a really practical 3-part model. You know I love a 3-part model. We've got triangles. I'm going to be drawing on this, and like we're going to get into it. It's going to be juicy. But I'm going to show you a 3-part model that allows you to take a practical assessment of what kind of where the gaps might be for you when it comes to implementing that tool, as well as a clear step process to encourage yourself to make that tool yours, to make it as familiar as holding a pen or pencil, right? Something like as if you've been doing it since you were a kid. So I'm so excited about this. Okay. The model that we're going to talk about in this video is something that applies to so many things. That's how I like to make models, is that they are both kind of a microcosm as well as a macrocosm. So the model is 3 parts. And the way I think of it is how to take something from challenging, scary, hard mode to easy, familiar, friendly mode. And so part of what often happens for us with these yummy self-development tools is that we kind of hold them at a distance from us. And maybe I need to change this label from self-development tools to something more just like self-care, because you could also fit like feeding yourself well or exercising in a way that's really nourishing for your body into this kind of bubble that I'm talking about. So it's kind of like things that you know are good for you. Like this model actually arose from me reflecting on boundaries and boundary setting, and how boundaries can feel, historically for me, have felt really hard. It just feels like, that's the hardest thing to do. And they've started to get easier, which is so exciting to me. And I was analyzing, like, why is that? What is it that has helped them to get easier? And the really cool thing about these 3 parts of this model, which we're going to get into here, I'm just so excited about it, is that I often find in myself and others that we'll have 1 or 2 of the sides, but we won't have all 3. And we need all 3 for something to transition from that kind of challenging, hard, at a distance from ourselves, to easy, familiar, embraced part of us. So we'll get into it in a minute, but before I dive into that, I want to say my aim for this video and my wish for you that you stick around to the end is that by the end, you will have greater self-awareness, greater self-compassion, right? I love awareness with compassion, because then it's like warm sunshine light versus harsh synthetic light of awareness, you know? So awareness, compassion, and practical tools that you can bring into your life that you can use today, starting right now, to help yourself feel greater ease, greater empowerment, and all that good stuff. So I do have a cast. I just wanted to name it. So if you're not seeing my left hand a lot, that's why. I fractured my wrist. Speaking of hard mode, I fractured my wrist recently, and it's in a cast now. So it's just going to be here along for the ride. So before we dig into the model, I want to name very, very clearly this dynamic of holding these self-care things at a distance from ourselves. I think there's lots of reasons why we do this, and we're all unique. I'm not going to say we're all the same. I will never say that. Sure, there are themes that cross over for a lot of us, but there's lots of reasons why we might hold some self-care activity, whether it's tapping, right, or feeding ourselves well, or having a nice morning walk, or whatever it is. Sometimes we hold these things at a distance, not just because of everything I'm about to cover of this, like how to make something easy mode, but it's also because it feels like it's not part of our identity. It's some separate version of ourselves. It's a future version of ourselves. It's an idealized version of ourselves, but it's not us. It's not who we are now. It's not the real us. And the cool thing is that this 3-part process, which I know I'm really hyping up, it actually helps these things, the tapping, the walks, whatever it may be, start to become part of our reality and therefore part of our self-concept and identity, which is really where things become just second nature, right? It's like, oh, of course I know how to write. Of course I know how to draw. Like I've been doing that since I was 5, maybe younger. I don't know the first day I held a utensil, a writing utensil, but it can become that deep where it's like, oh, of course I can do that. Thankfully, I didn't fracture my right wrist. I fractured my left and I'm right-handed. So this would be, we'll loop that in later. Okay, let's get on with the model. So I love a 3-part model. So I have drawn us a beautiful triangle on my page. I will show you in a moment. And the first side of the triangle is knowledge. We've got that. We've got our triangle. We got knowledge. So the first thing that you need, and I'm not actually saying these are in order, but one of the elements that you need is knowledge. And this includes kind of an understanding of the vocabulary of something, right? So like with tapping, you have to learn about all these points. You have to know where the points are so you know where to tap and how to tap. And you have to know the names of the points because a lot of times, whether it's written out or things like that, they'll like describe the points. Oh, side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose, all of that. And you also need to know like what a setup phrase is. So there's a certain vernacular or vocabulary that goes along with any new skill set. Or like with boundary setting, right? It's like understanding the deeper theory behind boundaries and how to structure sentences and even how to handle your body language when you're setting boundaries and how to digest and interpret the other person's response to that boundary, right? This is all this kind of knowledge and theory that goes along with any new skill, anything, or with nutrition, right? It's like understanding, okay, well, what would a balanced meal look like? What ratios of carbs and protein and fats and all that and fiber, what would that look like? So knowledge. This also, I love to connect things on multiple levels. This also connects with our head. And if you've watched my my other models about like the 4-part check-in, there's the head, the mind is one of the things we check in with. So I love that about this, it connects. So knowledge also connects with your head, right? The kind of known world. I'm going to do like a little tiny tangent here because I just can't help myself. I took German in high school, and there are 2 words for know, to know something in German. There's kennen and there's wissen. And wissen is this knowledge, knowing a fact, knowing something historic, knowing the name of something, knowing where something is, right? And then kennen is more like to know something with your heart, like you know a person or you know a song. Like it's like this deeper. And please, if you are German and you're watching this, I would love any nuance or clarity that you could add to this, but this is just my basic understanding of it. And I just love that differentiation, that there's 2 forms of knowing, this mental knowing and this more heart, soul knowing. I just think that's so cool. So this is a wissen type of knowing, knowledge in your head, knowledge, theory. So I want you to think about that thing that you're like, okay, there's some self-care type thing that I keep not doing, but I know I want to do. And check in with yourself. do you feel like you know enough about it? Do you have the knowledge, the theory, or is that part of what makes it feel intimidating to you? Or like that it's a little hard to connect with it? All right. The next side of the triangle is, how do I like to say this? Yes, it's story. This is a really fun one. So story, we have story on the side. This is actually connected to the heart. So we're moving on to the heart and story. The reason I call it story is, what are the stories or the emotional associations that you have with whatever this is? This is so juicy. So when it comes to boundaries, I'll bring it back to that. I historically had all these stories, these negative stories about boundaries. And so there's a lot of negative emotional charge about boundaries. I had certain family members I grew up with who were very kind of aggressive about boundaries and used them as a way to be very controlling and dominating. I also experienced most of the really kind, gentle people in my life as not having boundaries. And so it felt like boundaries in general were unkind and even cruel. And then there were times where I'd try to set boundaries and I felt like people would try to talk me out of them, or it felt like it created kind of a fight or something like that. Like it was a really negative emotional story about boundaries. And I had all these different examples that led to, oh wow, boundaries feel kind of bad and sad and scary. Tapping is another one. So that's like another self-care thing. I love that I'm looping boundaries in as like a self-care thing. I like that that's what's happening here. But tapping, that's another form of self-care. And as a kid, I tried to do a lot of tapping on my own. I had books, I had watched videos, and I didn't really understand certain really important tools, like how to titrate a certain, like a big emotion when it comes up. So how to kind of zoom out and ground yourself when you get flooded, and then how to come back to it and kind of make it feel more manageable, right? So I would get really flooded. So I had all these negative associations with doing this really cool, really gentle, really kind self-care practice of tapping, because I didn't quite know how to take care of myself in the process. And I felt like every time I did it, I wasn't doing it right. It just made me more upset, like it stirred things up, like it was just this whole negatives narrative around what's actually a really powerful tool. So I think you're probably getting the picture here, right? Negative stories, negative examples that cultivate this kind of heart space of tension, of sadness, of fear. So right, the story connects with your heart. It's an emotional story. So think about whatever that self-care thing is that you keep not doing, but you know you want to do, and reflect on the story. What is the emotional story that you tell yourself about that thing? Or what are the examples of, oh, what's happened when you've done that in the past? Maybe it feels super pleasant, like it's like only positive associations. Maybe it's really great. But dig a little. Maybe there are some negative associations. Sometimes I know I've experienced this throughout, since I've done like a lot of like meditation stuff and yoga and all that, where sometimes when we're so open and when we're in this kind of blissed out state from like a yoga retreat or whatever it is, there can be things that enter into our world of like people who are just not okay, or other upsetting type of circumstances. Or I think sometimes because we're like a little disembodied too, like it can feel hard to like be in a car driving, and like things can get like a little scary. And so sometimes, totally unintentionally, there's part of our brain that will start to create a negative association with that state of bliss or ease, because something kind of bad happened or something stressful happened afterwards, because life is crazy and chaotic, and it's really not our fault. And also because sometimes it takes time to go from that heightened, blissed out state to being more grounded in our bodies here in the rough and tumble of life. So reflect on that too. What stories do you have about this self-care practice. The emotional stories specifically. And you may not even think of examples. You may just notice you have a certain emotion that comes up when you think about this. So just notice that. Okay, and now the final one. Now, I will say, I think most people, and in a way most therapy and kind of self-development really talks about these two things. We really aim to try to address our knowledge, our understanding, and our emotional kind of stories and understanding of things. In a way, most of the tapping training that I've done as a coach really focuses on those things of, okay, how can we introduce greater knowledge to help empower this person and shift their perspective? Or how can we go into that story, that memory, and create more peace, more ease, more self-forgiveness, and shift the story to something that's more empowering, more whatever the person wants or needs. But there's a third piece that's missing, and oh my gosh, this is the game changer. This is like, sorry to wave my pen at you so aggressively. This is really the game changer. This is like the missing link, I think, for most of us. I know this has been the missing link for me. And this is like where change really happens. And part of where this insight came from is from my training as a women-empowered jiu-jitsu instructor. It's really fun. I'm like get emotional because I love it so much. It was just a year ago that I got certified to be an instructor in this incredible self-defense martial art called jiu-jitsu. And one of the things that I learned so you have to test and show that you understand the techniques. There's this core set of techniques that we teach in the Women Empowered curriculum. And to qualify to become an instructor, you have to get a really high score, like a 95 or higher on your test, where you're doing all the techniques. You also have to do like a fight simulation where you're just responding reflexively to indicators. And the things that we look for when somebody is testing are three things, and they actually totally map onto this model. It's all connected. One is that there's a clear understanding of the details of the technique, so knowledge, right? Details. Two, oh yeah, how do I like to relate the emotional story to this? I know I have it. Conviction, yes. The second is conviction, is that you have a certain level of confidence and assertiveness as you're doing the moves, that you know it's going to work, right? And so that clearly comes from like a positive emotional story. And that's such a huge one, because doing a move, feeling like, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, is it going to work? I don't know. And like, you're kind of timid and you're kind of nervous is such a different outcome than the deep assurity of like, oh, I know this is going to work. And there's certain moves that take a little time to do, especially depending on how the bad guy or the attacker is behaving. It's your training partner in all these drills, right? Which is so great. So we have our knowledge of the technique, right? We have our conviction, that kind of emotional oomph. And then this is the third part that perfectly maps on to this model I'm sharing with you. It's how reflexive is the move, right? How strong are your reflexes? So immediately when, I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, we have all these like rear bear hug attacks. If somebody tries to hug you from behind, over the arms, under the arms, and drag you away, there are immediate reflexes that need to be there, right? That you anchor and you base, right? And you like drop your weight and do whatever the next move is. So reflexes, and part of what we talk about all the time with reflexes is that they require repetition, because it's not a brain thing. It's not even a heart thing. It's a deep in your body, in your bones, this muscle memory. And this deeper wiring of, okay, this happens, I do this. This happens, I do this. Where to the point where you don't even have to think about it. I know there's all these examples all the time of like how, maybe not all the time, I don't know. I'm a nerd about this stuff, so it feels like all the time for me. When you touch a stove, a hot stove, and you recoil, the nerve reaction that's happening where you're getting the stimulus of something's too hot on my hand, it doesn't travel all the way to your brain before the reaction happens. There's actually like a shorter loop of reaction that's happening. And if you're a medical professional and you know the name of that, please comment below it. I'd love to know the name of that. Because it would be too long if it had to travel all the way from your hand, all the way to your head, and then back to your hand to have it retract. So it's this deeper reflex. And I don't know if these jujitsu reflexes are the same as that, but it can feel like that, where it's happening so quickly that you don't even have to think about it. So back to our triangle. The third side is reflex. And the body element of that is that it's your body. Your body. So we have knowledge in the head, stories in the heart, and reflexes in the body. And I want to specifically highlight this idea that reflexes come from reps or repetition. So think about that self-care thing that we keep checking in on. And I want you to ask yourself, do I have a lot of reps when it comes to this? Have I done it just once or twice? Are my reps recent too? Because reflexes, they fade pretty quickly. I know when I take a break from doing jujitsu and I get back in there, I'm like, there are certain moves where I'm like, ooh, my reflexes are a little rusty. So there's a level of recency required for reflexes to be strong. So think about the reps that you've done of that self-care thing. Is that something where there's some gaps? Is that something where, oh, no, I do it often. I just still have negative stories about it, or I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Or I did it often, but that was 5 years ago that I did it often. I did yoga every day 5 years ago. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that as an example. I don't know if I've ever done yoga every day. Maybe one day. So think about that for yourself. Is this the missing link for you? When it comes to boundaries, this is one of the things I realized. So I was like, oh my gosh, and I think because I'm a pretty mentally active person, I have definitely hung out in the knowledge and story space where it's like, okay, yeah, because the cool thing about those two is I can just do it all on my own. In my head, I don't even need to do anything. It can all just be very internal. Me and my journal, me and my thoughts. Even me and people I love just talking about stuff, right? It's like, we're doing it. I'm doing the thing. But if there isn't that grounding, that practicality of bringing it into the body, into action, right? Into activity of a repetition of doing the thing and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. It's like all that other stuff just lives in this etheric plane, which is it's still beautiful and valuable, but it never becomes real. And to loop it back to that idea of our self-concept, our identity, I think this is the missing link, and this is part of why we can live so long with things feeling like it's beautiful and vivid, but it's outside of us. It's separate from us somehow. And it's because we haven't brought it into reality. We haven't brought it into the actions of doing it again and again and again and again, doing it imperfectly, doing it like a little half-heartedly, doing it wholeheartedly, doing like whatever it looks like day to day. But when we do embody this, when we do let it become reflexive, this is huge. Now, story time. So to make it about boundaries. In the past, not only did I realize that boundaries were not reflexive, that instead it was like, oh no, everything's fine. It's totally fine. No, don't worry about it. That was the reflex for the longest time, even though I had all this knowledge of how important boundaries are and how valuable they are. And I even had all these conscious stories I had tried to create of like, no, like boundaries are good. And here's an example of how they're good. And here's a healthy person setting a boundary and how it's ultimately okay. And here's a boundary setting going well, because not everybody's being a jerk about you having a boundary. I had all that, but the reflex, because I didn't practice setting boundaries, was still, oh, no, it's fine. Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I can stay, and stay late or stay on the phone with you or do that thing for you, whatever. But as I have been practicing boundaries more, it's so fun. Like sometimes I almost surprise myself with the boundary coming out. I'm like, oh my gosh, there it was. I didn't even have to think about it fully, to just be like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Thank you though. It's just like, what? Who is that? And something I want to really highlight here is that it's so powerful, and something that I've loved about my whole jiu-jitsu training is that the way that we practice these techniques is that we do it from a place of play and fun. Specifically, all the boundary setting. Like we literally practice verbal boundary setting in our classes. It's one of my favorite things. I think some people don't like it, but I really like it. It's maybe like the acting kid in me who just loves like playing like that. But we make it all a game. We try to have as much fun as possible, which is so great because you learn so much better when you're having fun. And that means it's going in deeper. That means you're more willing to do reps because you're like, that was fun. Let's do it again. And there you are, getting that repetition in. And you also, this totally, and I've been wanting to say this the whole time, reflexes and getting repetitions totally feeds the other two sides of this triangle. Because I will point with my casted hand. Because the reflexes here give us more examples and experiences which can feed the stories, right? The more proof, the more experiences you have with something, the more opportunities you have for positive stories and new stories, and also just like a certain level of story of this is normal, this is familiar, this is, I was safe there, I did it, and I was safe there, I did it again, I was safe again, I did it there, I had a fun time, I did it again, I felt really empowered, I did it there, it was a little uncomfortable, but I still survived, I did it again, right? You get the picture. And also, when we do repetitions and we build our reflexes, we're strengthening our knowledge. And once again, I guess this video is a lot about jiu-jitsu, probably because I miss it, because I haven't done it in a little bit. Knowledge of a technique, of a self-care skill set deepens as we do it more, because we notice the nuance. Like with the jiu-jitsu technique, I realized, oh wow, that detail that I've heard about, I could feel how important it was this time with that specific partner, or when they were giving me a specific type of resistance. I'm so glad that somebody had named and labeled that detail for me of the technique, because now I can feel and embody the importance of it, right? Or like with boundary setting, I really love this creator, and if you haven't heard of him yet, please look him up, Jefferson Fisher. He's such a like calm, compassionate communicator. He wrote a book called Your Next Conversation, and he has a great YouTube channel, podcast, all that. And he talks about specific ways to structure statements and to like set boundaries. And he talks about clarity is kindness. Being really clear is being kind. And he especially talks about this idea of leading with kind of whatever it is that you might feel nervous to say, right? Of like, I can't come to the party, but I'm so grateful that you thought of me and invited me, and I hope you have a great time, right? So rather than beating around the bush of, oh my gosh, it sounds like it's gonna be so much fun, and you're such a great host, and blah, 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 but I'm so sorry, I actually can't make it, right? That there's tension all throughout that, but he names how it's like you just kind of hit with the clarity, it might sting a little, and then you land on the gratitude, the shift in topic of, hey, I'm really looking forward to planning something in the future, whatever it might be. So there's all these techniques and this knowledge that we get to implement and practice and realize the value of when we get our reps in. So this is really great. I'm obviously really pumped about it, if you couldn't tell. So I want you to think about that self-care thing again, and think about what would it look like if you were to create a more equilateral triangle, a more balanced triangle when it comes to these three aspects. How could you shift your knowledge to being deeper, a deeper understanding of the details of how to do that thing? Maybe that's where you need some more time and energy. Or maybe you need a little more time on the emotional aspect, the stories you have about it. Maybe you want to be reflecting on the negative stories and kind of untangling those, getting curious about those, digesting them further. And maybe you want to start looking for proof of positive stories, of positive associations. I love doing this, where if there's some new skill set, like boundary setting, I kind of set myself up to look for it everywhere in my life. In the movies I'm watching, the books I'm reading, the interviews I'm listening to, the conversations I'm having, even just people watching when I'm out in the world, just kind of seeing, ooh, is that a boundary? Was somebody setting a boundary? Oh, and look, and they're okay, and they're safe. And wow, and look, like it's just gathering proof that this thing is great. Now, when it's something more like, tapping or drinking lemon water or something like that, that's more personal, right? That's where you just need to get the reps in to give yourself those stories about it, right? Of, wow, I felt really good when I did that. And notice it. Take stock. It's like underscoring the experience with your awareness. And then the third area, do you need to spend some time on getting the repetition in and building the reflex of it, where you don't even have to think about it. You feel a little dysregulated and you just start tapping, or you take your 4-4-4-4 box breath. 4-4-4-4. Yeah. Whatever it is, right? Is there some way you need to build it more as a reflex? Now, one last little thought about the reflexes is this is where you can nerd out really hard about habit stacking, which is where any existing habit, you just tack a new habit on top of it. So like, I got really into water picking my teeth, like over the last few years. And I used to only floss and brush, but now it's like, I floss, I water pick, I brush, right? And so it's like, it feels weird to not do it, but I just tucked that new habit inside of two really strong existing ones. So sometimes with getting repetition in, we need to build in reminders like on your phone or post-it notes, or like an accountability buddy or a coach, or we just want to try to layer that new habit into an existing flow. So you've taken inventory about how this self-care item fits into this model and where you might need a little more support. I really would love to hear from you all how this goes and if you try this out, and even which area you feel like you tend to be strongest in when it comes to things, and which area you tend to be weakest in, which area needs a little love. And so when you can take something, right, we started off with this idea of like, is it really that it's scary and hard and challenging, or is it just that it's unfamiliar? And really the whole goal of all three of these things is to take something from feeling unfamiliar, right? You don't know a lot about it. You have scary, negative, or sparse stories about it. You don't really know that much, like emotionally about it. And you've never really done it, to feeling like it's really familiar. You know a lot about it. You know the language of it. You know the details. You know how it works. You have stories about it that feel empowering and encouraging, like, oh my gosh, people who tap every day, there's like literally all this cool science about how people who tap daily, it helps so many different biometrics. It's helped people who want to lose weight more consistently. It's helped people with sleep who want to sleep better. It's like, so sometimes, you know, we can gather positive stories from other people's experiences, but so you make it a positive association, and then you do it a lot, and then it becomes super familiar, right? Because you're doing it a lot, right? I feel like that's kind of obvious, but if you don't ever do something, it's not going to feel familiar, and it could feel more intimidating. And you might even notice that this happens with things that you've done in the past. Maybe there was a certain type of sport or art or writing that you did in the past, but because you haven't done it for a while, you're like, oh, I don't know if I could do that anymore. And that's really probably because there's been a little fading in the knowledge, a little change to the story, but a lot of lack of repetition. So if something feels hard, if something feels like you're holding it at a distance, get curious about, how could I make this more familiar? And that question is so powerful, especially when it comes to things that we really want in our lives, we're really aspiring to in our lives, but that we hold separate. Just make it more familiar. How could I make that more familiar? The last thing I'll share is one more story, because I think this is such a great example of this. In high school, I went to a Waldorf high school in Austin, Texas. It was such a great experience. And the way that Waldorf schools work is that you have a main lesson block. And that's the first hour and 45 minutes of your day is a certain topic. So it could be a certain, zone of history or geometry or like optics, or what other topics do we do? Anyway, things like that. Science. Sometimes it was like, botany or things like that. So we had this one class. It was some type of history class. I think it was in the 10th grade, maybe 11th. And these classes last for 6 weeks or so. So it's every day for 6 weeks. And our teacher told us at the beginning of this class that not only were we going to have really heavy-duty reading assignments every single night and on the weekends, but we were also expected to write high-quality, high-level summaries of the reading we did every single night. So we had to read 50 pages of really dense history text, give or take. And then we had to write summaries in really clear essay formatting, MLA, blah, blah, like the whole thing, every single night. And I'm a decent writer. At that time, I was like, yeah, I like writing. I preferred creative writing. But I kind of lost it. I was like, that is impossible. There's no way. It felt, I didn't know how to do it. Gotta go back to the model. I didn't know how to do it. I was like, I don't even know like how I'm going to structure these essays. I don't fully know and understand how to summarize things. I don't understand MLA formatting. And on the heart level, I didn't have any positive stories of reading that much and writing that much. My main stories and experiences and associations with reading that much were, gosh, I'm just going to fall asleep. I fall asleep all the time if I have heavy duty reading. I've learned it's because I was leaning back on a sofa, and if you lean back, it makes you sleepier. Lesson learned. But I had all these stories of like, it's impossible. I'm just going to fall asleep. I'll never get it done. And I had 0 repetitions of that volume, that intensity of that kind of work. But I'd say maybe 2 weeks in, I knew how to do it. I had positive experiences of getting the essays back, getting good grades on them, realizing, oh my gosh, I can do this. And even enjoying it, I started to enjoy it. There was a satisfaction to how challenging it was, and just almost feeling like kind of like when you're in the gym lifting weights, where you're like, oh, I can lift heavier than I thought. Whoa, look at me. It's like kind of powerful. And I had so much repetition. It felt reflexive. It was like, oh yeah, of course. I'm going to read this and then write a summary essay about it. of course, that's totally chill. I've done this many times. I can keep doing it. And the really cool thing about that whole experience was I don't think I ever had a class that was harder than that in my higher levels of education, mostly because I was doing like yoga and psychology and environmental science and agriculture kind of stuff. So I think the schools I went to were for college were a little less intense in the like mental academic rigor. It was more practical, like applied sciences. But even to this day, because that was such a powerful experience, there's a certain level of confidence and ease I feel when it comes to writing, because I'm like, oh, well, I could do that. I could do it. Not only because the really cool thing is when we go through these experiences of taking something that feels unfamiliar and scary and making it familiar, making it easeful for ourselves, is that not only does that specific thing become something that we feel that way, but there's a meta awareness of, wow, in general, I could take something, whatever it may be, that feels hard and scary and unfamiliar, and I can transform it through these 3 steps to become something that isn't a big deal, that I can just do. And so there's a level of confidence that comes with that. That's like truly like, that's like a treasure. It's a jewel. It's a jewel that you get to carry with you of a self-concept. So play with this. My dear friends, I hope that you feel greater self-awareness, greater self-compassion, because now you get to realize like, oh, I was just missing the reflex part, or oh, I was just missing the knowledge part. I just needed like more details, more terminology, whatever it is. Like maybe you just were missing one part of this, and that's why it's been hard. It's not you. It's not like there's something wrong with you. You just needed a model, a little 3-part model. And that you have practical tools. I feel like this was a pretty practical one. If you have any questions, if you ever want to discuss this kind of work or have like a coaching experience with me where we dig into a specific topic for you, I'm so available for that. I'll link my website below. I do one-on-one coaching sessions with people, but I also am so passionate about you feeling empowered to coach yourself, to take yourself through this process, to have your own journey, because there's so much that's possible from that place. So I'm here if you need me, and I wish you all the best. More soon.